Today, I'm going to show you of how some of my most painful lead got turned into soul gold. And you can fast forward to this moment now where for myself, from going to being powerless as a kid to living unconscious in that victim mindset to taking responsibility to realizing empowerment brings me purpose and transformation, helps with that process, and then putting that process for myself and then taking other people through that process. This is your invitation. Become the alchemist of your life. You decode your heaven on earth and go through the alchemical process. The alchemist is a master of himself so that he can master life. People thought alchemists were turning lead into gold, but they're really crystallizing their soul into form. Alchemize your golden potential. Welcome to the Golden Life. Welcome to the Golden Life. My name's David Gilbert, and I'm here to help you become the alchemist of your life so you can create as much inner and outer gold as possible. And in this episode, I'm going to teach you the process of transmutation, also known as transformation. And this is to acknowledge that we could understand deeper patterns. And this is really what alchemists spent their lives doing. They sought out to understand the deeper patterns of life so that they can start to master that, and more importantly, apply it to themselves so they can master themselves. So I'm going to take you today through the entire alchemical journey. And I really want you to see this as something that's a macro and micro pattern of the universe. This is how you can take idea into manifestation. This is how you can take lead into what we're going to talk about today of soul gold. But this is really the deeper path of transformation. And this is even to acknowledge the lifelong path the alchemists walked to crystallize their greatest potential, aka their soul, onto earth. And then at the end, I'll share the secret 8th step to bring it all together. But this is a journey that I take people through one-to-one. And today, I'm going to show you of how some of my most painful lead got turned into soul gold. And this goes back to the moment when I was 3 or 4 and my parents got divorced. And having gone through that experience, I think I shared it in another episode, but if I didn't, I had a memory come up. I was really good at tucking away the pain that I went through during that experience. But I had a memory come up during a hypnosis session, and it was me running off when my parents were yelling at each other, and I was screaming at them, and that didn't work. So I ran off, and I was kicking and hitting the ground. And I can come back to that feeling of just feeling completely powerless. And on top of that, voiceless. And this is getting off subject, but it's wild to see because I've seen my own daughter do the same pattern. And this is a whole nother discussion for another time of how DNA and traumatic memories can get passed down lineages. But anyways, that moment carved out a core wound in my life. And I don't say this to instill any type of pain or fault, especially if you're a parent and you've gone through this process yourself. But this is the opportunity we all have to work through the difficult circumstances we're all going to be presented in life. And this, what I went through, was really my gift. And I'm going to share why. So, starting the alchemical journey, the process of transformation or transmutation. And it starts with calcination. And this is the element of fire. So this is where I lived so much of my life unconscious to this memory. I tucked it away. And you can say the moment this memory got brought to my awareness, a lot got burned down. right? This old pattern got burnt down. Now, this can also show up in your life of those moments where you go through, it feels like your entire life is crashing down. And this is where the alchemical fire comes to transform everything in your life, to burn away everything in your life. And this is usually the moment you come to know a higher power. You have some awakening moment. You realize the universe is much bigger than yourself, or that you had this lead that was weighing you down. And you can go back to episode 1 and listen to You Are Golden to come back to your true source. Because when you burn away the ego, aka the stories that you have about yourself, you get to your true essence, and then you can see all this lead, aka all the unconscious belief systems that you're holding on to. So I was unconscious for a long time, the fact that I felt powerless. Therefore, I was living with a victim mindset, and I would find myself often disassociating from life, because if you have a victim mindset and you're not even aware that you feel powerless, well, life is just hard and life is just painful and you can't do anything about it. So that caused me, my coping mechanism was to disassociate from aspects of life. But when that memory came up, it started to burn down the ability to carry that unconscious victim mindset. And when I work with somebody one-to-one, that's exactly what we do. We get into the story, we come back to the truth, but we burn down all those belief systems that were just coping mechanisms, and we bring them to our conscious awareness. And then that leads into phase number 2, which is dissolution. This is the water element. And this is the moment we realize we had that experience and we start to process all the feelings that we had, right? If we're taking our core lead in life and turning that into soul gold, this is when you give your inner child, or at least in my case, my little 3 or 4 version of little David, I gave him the opportunity to release those emotions that he was holding on to. I shared this in a past episode that this part of the journey is really about integration and bringing those moments of you that get lost in the past because they didn't have an outlet to express their emotions. Therefore, there's always a part of you that's stuck in the past and unconsciously controlling you in the present. So when you allow yourself to feel those emotions, relive that moment of kicking and screaming and feeling powerless and voiceless, and then shedding a whole lot of tears after that, that allows that frozen, trapped energy actually get stuck in your fascia or tissue. You give that energy an opportunity to release. And this is where, when I work with people one-to-one, we use breath work, because a full breath work journey gives your body an opportunity to clear out on the emotional body, on the physical body, and even the mental body. And then we go into the next phase, which is separation. So for myself, starting to realize I have this core wound of powerlessness, it caused me to be an unconscious victim to life. And my behavior adaptation, my coping mechanism, was to disassociate in general. Well, as I started to realize that and I brought it to my awareness, and then I released the emotions, then it was up to me to take the little kernel of either truth or growth that was worth holding on to and get rid of the dross. Now, when I work with somebody one-to-one, this is the moment we go to Sunset Cliffs and we do a despacho ceremony where we take the actual lead and we throw it into the ocean. And this is to separate ourselves from the pain, from everything that's not worth being held on to, and releasing that. And then simultaneously getting in touch with our true essence, or the true essence of what's worth being saved. So for myself, this was really about understanding in life. And in the future episode, I'll be talking about, my love for creation or manifestation. And if you truly want to step into being a powerful co-creator, aka an alchemist, well, you come down to this critical moment, almost just like the Matrix, where you have a choice. And instead of the red pill or the blue pill, it's, are you going to be the victim or are you going to be responsible? And whether it's completely true or not, you have the ability to take total responsibility for every single thing in your life. And even if you're not the one at fault for certain things in your life, by taking on this reframe, you step into a whole new level of power. So that is where I decided to take responsibility for everything in my life and for everything moving forward. And that is the moment of separation, right? I'm going to let go of this victim mindset or this unconscious pattern of being the victim to circumstance. And then we enter the next phase of transmutation. So we burn it away, we put it in water, dissolute it, we separate it with air, we get to the true essence that's worth being saved, the energy, the core little nugget that's worth being saved. And then conjunction is when we bring it back together, the purified dross with the true essence into a new being. And you could say everything that we went through prior was the integration, and now we're stepping into embodiment. So this is where, if you had a really beautiful peak experience, conjunction is kind of like the moment where you finally accept your past moment. So maybe you have been working on an old pattern, and then you have another peak experience or just a moment of grace, and you feel like you can truly accept your past and truly allow it into your heart. That is going from conjunction into fermentation. This is where you integrate, you accept, you allow, and then skipping a step really quickly into fermentation is where you really start to transmute it through your heart. So coming back to conjunction, for myself, this is where, by taking responsibility, that powerlessness is one of my core wounds and patterns that I will always work on, and it became a frame of life that was unconscious to me. But now I take responsibility for this frame of life. Well, then I get to bring this back into my story, into my being, by realizing empowerment, the opposite of powerlessness, brings me purpose. And that brings me so much fulfillment. So now I get to live a life of purpose and fulfillment by living into that purpose, by acknowledging that core wound and seeing that when I do things that help me empower myself, and then more importantly, empower others, I get the greatest reward out of life, living a fulfilling life. And this is where you really start to embrace it and then enter the next phase of fermentation. So just like I was talking about, this is the moment where I really embrace it. And when I'm working with someone one-on-one, this is when we really step into the heart and seeing the past as part of our sacred story. Acknowledging that nobody else is ever going to have the same experiences as you, and you are a unique expression in the infinite cosmos. And you can really start to honor this and even love everything that you went through, because by the fact of you watching this video or listening to this podcast here, you are a survivor. You have been fighting your whole life, but now you get to let go of all that additional suffering or pain that you didn't need to hold on to. Then as you start to ferment this is also when you go through the self-discovery or healing journey, and you realize, You get the nugget, let's say for my example of understanding that powerlessness brings me purpose to empower others. Well, this is where you start doing that in the world, but you're new to it. So what happens? Well, we enter the next phase, which is distillation, which this is where you go up and down like a figure 8. You go into the new way of being, back down into the ground versus your old way of being. Or another way to look at this is oscillation. This is you going from your old version of you into your new version of you. So I can look back to myself, to where I can go back to when I was at Roka's retreat giving my first talk on soul gold. And just starting to acknowledge, going through the story of my tattoo sleeve and realizing that alchemy is my dharma. And of course that makes sense because I felt powerless as a kid. So to empower others with the most powerful tools of transformation and transmutation is going to bring me so much fulfillment. Well, then I started putting that out into the world. But I would still teeter-totter, flip-flop between my old way of being, of unconsciously having some form of a victim mindset or getting pulled into that old frame, and then also stepping into my newfound power of being able to empower others and living into that purpose. So this is a really critical moment to know that when you go through a transformative experience or maybe a peak experience, that you're going to go through the distillation phase. You're going to kind of oscillate between worlds of the old you and the new you. Or in alchemical terms, this is the final phase of the journey where you purify everything else that's the dross that you're holding on to. And then as you continue to walk that path, now you are fully starting to embody your new way of being, right? This is where now I'm really starting to teach these things and starting to take people through some of these exercises. And that's where you're going from embodiment into the final phase of crystallization. But in the alchemical journey, this is coagulation. So this is when, if they were to take actual lead and turn it into gold, now it looks like gold, but it's like this soft mold and it's starting to coagulate, starting to harden, crystallize as its new source. And you can fast forward to this moment now where for myself, from going to being powerless as a kid to living unconscious in that victim mindset to taking responsibility to realizing empowerment brings me purpose and transformation, helps with that process, and then putting that process for myself and then taking other people through that process. And now having seen the experience of people when they apply this transmutation to themselves and take their lead and turn it into gold, and having done that for a couple years now I get to enter the last phase of crystallization, where I just know I have my gift of empowering others, and I get to do this as a living. And when I work with people one-on-one, this is the moment we hop into the cold bath and then go straight into the jacuzzi. But this is really full integration of the experience that you had, full crystallization, bringing it all together, and your power that you have to step into that next version of greatness within you, right? Like the statue of David that's right beside me, you are carving that out of yourself. You are getting in touch with your true essence, and then you are walking the path of continuously purifying the dross, the lead, the paint over your eyes, letting that go, committing to staying in your essence, staying in your power, and giving your gifts to the world. And eventually that will become who you are. And this is how you live powerfully as the alchemist. When you understand and apply this process internally, then it gets that much easier to apply it externally. So stay tuned, because I'm going to share some stories of possibility next of how you can go from dreams or insights and transmute that into reality, because this is where things get really exciting. So thank you for joining me on this alchemical journey today. I hope it really shines some light on the path and the power that you have to take whatever lead you have in life, whatever unconscious adaptations or pain or whatever else, and your ability to transmute that into gold. Because I could promise you, as you do this, you are going to feel so empowered, and you're going to truly start to master yourself, and then master your life. So thank you for following along. At this point, if you haven't left any review or hit that like or subscribe button, please pay it forward by doing one of those things. And I wish you a beautiful rest of your day, and stay empowered as the alchemist that you are.